Welcome to Notes from the North with Kyle and Sam.
Well, welcome back to Notes from the North. Kyle and Sam here. And you know what? The Vikings play a lot of interesting games. We can look at over the past couple of years,
Yeah.
lots of very fascinating outcomes. Think about Indianapolis, you think about Buffalo, you think about San Fran earlier. They definitely keep it exciting, and I don't think you can use the word exciting for a 3-0 football game that happened yesterday.
Exciting in the sense that it was a close, tight game, but it was a
Right.
dull game. If the NFL has basically moved the league in a direction where they want, high-end quarterback play and lots of scoring, because that's pretty engaging. Like a lot of sports, they want more offense. This was not it, obviously. So, that's kind of a bit of a downer. It was a bit of a slog of a game. If you wanted to be really optimistic, you'd say, holy jumpins, Brian Flores. Now, at this point, I think there's always that little voice in the back of people's head now saying every excellent game means it's likelier that the Vikings lose this guy, right? Like, there's just no way he is amongst the top 32. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no way he shouldn't be leading the charge here. I'm just looking up. I want to make sure the numbers are 100% correct. Okay, right now, Sam, would you have seen this coming? Dial back the clock even to the summer. The Vikings are fifth in the NFL right now by averaging just 18.6 points against per game.
So,
Fifth in top 5 in the NFL for points against per game.
which I think certainly yesterday helps.
I know, and that's my point. Yesterday was an extreme, but
but
they've been playing well. Week 1 to 3 was rough, admittedly. Since then, it has not. Since then, it has been excellent. Not shutout excellent, but excellent.
well, and I wanted to make this part. I was going to say yesterday helps, but it's not. Sometimes I think like there's different stats you can look at for a defense, and
Yeah.
points is an important one. It doesn't tell the full story, but it's important.
Yeah.
And I think one of the added pieces is that it's not like for some teams they could have that because they have a very good offense.
That's right.
And
Yes,
that's
exactly.
not been the case for the Vikings this season. They have the potential to be, but it has not been at the
Yeah.
hands of a possession dominant, high
Yeah.
scoring offense that has allowed that to happen. It is
Right.
it's
Yeah.
happened. So yeah, certainly there are different ways you can look at this game. Again, there's some interesting stats that you come out of yesterday. 34 third down attempts. Uh,
Yeah. Wild.
Combined total
Yeah,
yardages
wild.
of 433 yards. And I don't know if maybe you have the number in front of you, but how many punts would you guess happened yesterday?
Oh, I don't have the number in front of me. But like combined each side,
Combined each side.
20.
Yeah, 17.
Yeah. I was about to say like it was man, Ryan Wright and gosh, his name escapes me. Is AJ what's the AJ Cole,
That sounds
the
right.
punter for the Raiders. Um yeah, they earned their paycheck yesterday. That was a special teams game. And so there you go. To tip the cap to Matt Daniels. Like I know um the missed field goal 49 yarder, those things happen. But you tip the cap to the special teams certain. Because that was a game where like one major gaff would have that would have been it, right? Like one punt return or one whatever. Um, that could have been it. And there are a couple moments, I know that kind of weird Greg Joseph punt thing at the end didn't really go exactly as planned. Um, but it was still a clever design and a clever play call and good deception. You just kind of, when's the last time Joseph had to do that, if ever? But it did get the achieved effect insofar as it, drained more time off the clock, made it so unlikely for the Raiders to win.
Yeah.
So yeah, you like a little better ball placement, but that was a good, very clever play call. Um, Good stuff there. Good
It,
preparation.
it was interesting. I was very curious. Like when they were going for the field goal, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
know if I love this, but also like, was I concerned that the Raiders were going to march down the field and score?
Yeah.
Uh, no. And
Yeah.
again, like you said, maybe ball placement could have been a little better, but
Yeah.
did run significant time off the clock. And yeah,
I mean, Sanchez made that point, right? You really wanted to go one of the 2 corners. He
right.
kind of just blooped it. You know what I mean? Just kind of this little thing kind of right ahead of himself or right ahead of the team. So it wasn't perfect.
Wasn't.
But 7 seconds, no timeouts. There's zero chance they can get into field goal range and stop the clock. So it has to be a Hail Mary or the fumble or the laterals that they were doing. So it kind of made the Raiders ultra predictable. And then ended up, I think they actually counted that as another turnover on the end of the game there. I think they gave possession to Jay Ward. So I think in the end, the Vikings won the turnover battle 3-0. And obviously that helps the defense. And the defense doesn't have to. So yes, Sam's point, if you have a clock killing, first down getting, score points kind of offense, that's one way of helping your defense, especially if you can force the other team to become one dimensional because the offense is so good. Like you force them into this passing attack and and it all feeds into itself. That's certainly the best way to do it. To the Vikings' credit yesterday, a tiny little credit for the offense was that they didn't actually turn the ball over. And the Vikings ended the game plus 3 in the turnover margin, kind of +2 in reality, but +3, I think, in the final statistics.
Yeah, yeah. I was interested. Like you called it. I know you kind of misspoke and said it was the fumble play, like the lateral play. Like
Yeah,
essentially, it is a fumble play. Like it's just it.
yeah,
It often is not working, and the ball ends up hitting the ground. And it's a bit of a mess. But
total
uh,
mess. Yeah,
again, pad the stats, make it happen. Um,
yeah,
so let's point in this direction here because I think there's probably again the score is a big storyline coming out of yesterday. Uh,
mm-hmm.
And then you've
Mm-hmm.
got two major storylines, I think, if you're thinking about it from the Vikings.
Yeah,
You've got injuries, and you've got uh, quarterback play
quarterback.
and
Yeah,
who is going forward here. And like you mentioned, there was no turnovers in the offense yesterday, which is certainly a plus, especially considering what Dobbs has been doing lately. Um, some ways it almost feels like that makes it worse. Like it's like if you look at the score and it was 0, like it just there was just nothing going
yeah,
yesterday for so
yeah,
much of the game. So
yeah,
uh, maybe let's start with the quarterback play because I think
yeah,
certainly you see Dobbs. I think let me just I'll phrase it like this. Can you see Dobbs coming back into uh, being a quarterback for this team um, after
yeah.
what he's shown yesterday, but even the last couple of weeks.
I think Sam here is trying to phrase things without being mean or too negative. But the short answer is no. There's no way that Josh Dobbs gets the start on Saturday when they travel to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. There is zero chance that happens. Okay. We talked about this last podcast. It is so coming into week 14, pretend that the Raiders game never happened. Josh Dobbs had played 10 straight bad quarters of football, right? He had a really good second quarter against the Saints. Excellent. 3 touchdown passes. There's an amazing in-game adjustment from Kevin O'Connell. They kind of started calling those crossing routes. It's kind of a man, beater. Excellent second quarter. Great. He then has a clunker of a second half and allows the Saints to, make it a one-score game, and then a dud against the Broncos and a dud against the Bears. Comes out now out of the bye and a freaking dud against the Raiders. So it has been, I guess, more than 3 games in a row now where he's just played straight up bad football. And that's fine. Like legit, like there shouldn't be animosity or anger towards Josh Dobbs. He is a career journeyman who is struggling to hang on to rosters. Right. And I know he kind of got the chance to start a lot in Arizona, but like in reality, he's best as like a QB2 or a QB3. Right. He's super smart. He's a great competitor. He's tough. He's going to show up. Teammates like him, right? Like it was super fun. He pulled off the win in week 9 against Atlanta, pulled it off in New Orleans. Excellent stuff. Didn't sink the team against Las Vegas, right? Better ball security. Um, no reason to be upset about Dobbs. I think this is just kind of who he is. He's a career backup, and that's totally fine. There's really no QB1 debate. Kevin O'Connell did say in his press conference that I'm just not going to get into it. I'm not going to name it yet. We just kind of finish this game. We're going to kind of let it settle, and then we'll kind of go forward with it. But it's going to be Mullens. And
Yeah.
honestly, Sam, the only debate at this point is who is QB2, right? And the Vikings really need to be prepared for that, given how things have gone for them with injuries. And maybe this will be a transition point to get into the injury topic. But given how things have gone, the Vikings can't just say, "Oh, we got Mullens at QB1. Whew, okay," and then we just kind of, glad that's settled. We'll have no more worries at quarterback. Like there has to be a contingency plan for Mullens if there are struggles or injury. And so the only question at this point, then, who is QB2, right? So I think it's pretty clear that Dobbs has gone down one, Mullens has gone up one, right? But has Dobbs actually gone down two, and Jaron Hall is maybe now the main backup? That's really the only question at this stage. Mullens is going to be the dude, almost certain, like 99.9%.
Yeah.
I just can't see a reality where that's not the case.
Yeah. No, I was trying to, I appreciate you helping phrase my question. I really was like,
Yeah.
I think it is hard to see Dobbs come back from this. We were talking a little bit before we started here.
No chance.
Like in terms of return on investment that the Vikings have made for Dobbs, fantastic. You know what?
Tremendous.
He did a
Tremendous return.
great job, had them in games. Again, you can look
Yes.
at what happened
Yeah.
against Denver. You can look what happened against Chicago. You can look what happened even in this game
Yep.
with the win. But again, for what they did,
Yeah.
he's done a great job.
Just swapped a sixth and a seventh.
Like
Perfect. Like that's all you could ask for. You got you 2 wins. He played 500 ball, and the game he got yanked ended up in a win.
and right and
Yeah.
kept some motivation or some momentum that this team had.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
lots of good things, but again, you see Nick Mullens in there, and just like Dobbs, I love watching. We've talked about this. Love watching a running quarterback, but you do need to be able to throw the ball too, and that just wasn't happening.
The offense opens up with Mullens. He's more accurate. He's got more power.
That
just a better quarterback.
That the first throw that he had yesterday, I was like, oh, okay. So this is what it feels like.
It felt like a really, it was like, oh wow, okay.
Oh, okay.
And again, it was lucky. And Mullens to say that as post game presser, it was like he said maybe there was a bit of beginner's luck there, but again, it was like this 26-yard connection to Hawkinson. And you're like, ooh, wow, that feels good. That feels good. Yeah.
Right. And then you look at the throw to Osborne. It was just like, oh, okay, like, you know what? You do need a quarterback that can make those throws, especially with the talent that the Vikings have at receiver. You need to get guys the ball.
Yeah. And they're running. I know Madison was injured, but like the Vikings are actually running the ball pretty well. They bottled up Dobbs, which is fine, but like they're actually getting some production in the ground game. And then so you have your full offensive arsenal, at least initially, in terms of your receivers, right? And then those tight ends who you really love, Hawkinson and Oliver. And then Madison's running the ball well, and the offense just can't accomplish anything. That's an issue.
Yeah.
Right? That's an issue for a NFL quarterback turned head coach, Kevin O'Connell, an offense first team, an elite collection of talent. Like I'm not saying they got to be like the greatest show on turf, you know what I mean? But like they do have to, or like the '98 Vikings, but they do have to be competent. They do have to be competent. They do have to score points. Brian Flores deserves, goodness, he deserves an offense that can score some points and sustain a drive and help him out here. It was pretty painful for the vast majority of that game. Very painful.
Yeah, painful, and yet there's also, I think, you come out of that game still feeling like, okay, you know what? If you give Mullens a full game, there's still a chance that quarterback play is not going to sink this team, and that they're going to be able to hopefully do something that.
Dude, Mullens is a decent player.
Yeah, keeps
he's a very good backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Right. And I know they're hoping that. I know the hope when they signed him was that if we do need him, it's going to be because like Cousins sprained his ankle and he's out for a week. Like you didn't want him in this capacity, but he's a good backup quarterback. I genuinely don't understand. There's this sense within Vikings fandom, or at least maybe it just exists on Twitter, of like just being like underwhelmed by Mullens or not being enthused about it. Like I genuinely don't get it. Mullens is a gamer. He's not going to be intimidated. Yeah, the ball placement is not necessarily ideal sometimes. Yeah, he can throw a turnover, but dude's going to go for it, right? He is not going to be scared. And if you're a backup quarterback and you're going to be able to go into that huddle and your teammates respect you and you're going to challenge the defense and try and make plays down the field, that's it. Like that's it. That's what we want, right?
At the end of the day, it's a backup quarterback, right? It's not like you're not
Yeah,
going to have
yeah, yeah,
it's not you're not going to have a second
yeah.
Kirk Cousins.
No, exactly. That's
There.
right. You know,
Um,
what more can you expect? It's perfect.
yeah.
I mean,
So
not perfect, but it's
Nick
good.
Mullens is Nick Mullens is the guy. I will
Yes,
say I think Jaron
yes,
Hall does deserve another chance uh if God forbid that Mullens has an injury. Jaron Hall has had
yeah.
very limited action, yet showed very well in that limited action, and
Hmm.
in some ways deserves a chance. So I just wanted to throw that in there as a
He might be QB too.
it might
He
be
honestly he might be. I don't know if Kevin O'Connell will. I expect when he's we're here recording on Monday. I would think that on the press conference today from O'Connell, he names Mullins the starter. I don't know if he'll dig deeper into the hierarchy and
yeah,
reveal who's the two and the three. Um, and in some ways, you kind of hope you never find out because
yeah,
hopefully Mullins just goes out and plays well, and it's always a mystery. But I would venture to guess that it might be Hall. Yeah, it
right.
might be Hall.
So you alluded to there, you alluded to it before. I think it is important for us to talk about injuries, right? And so
Yeah,
certainly the big name, we have Justin Jefferson coming back.
yeah,
Uh, Very clear that they were trying to get him involved early, and then takes a strange hit, seems to
yeah,
injure himself, and you kind of see
yeah,
him leaving, and he walks out of the stadium, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you get
yeah,
the report that he's out for the game, and then you get the report that he's gone to the hospital.
yeah,
And so significant concern there. You've got Brian O'Neill that
yep,
comes out of the game. You got Alexander Madison that comes out of the game. You got Dalton Reisner that comes out of the game. And man, that offensive line was looking like the patchwork that it was um,
yeah.
late. I might be missing people, but some significant injuries
Yeah.
there.
I
Uh,
think the one you're missing, Sam, and this was at the end. O'Connell talked about in his presser that Jalen Naylor's now in concussion protocol.
right. Yeah,
And so he's their WR4 or WR5. And Mullins was going at Naylor actually a decent bit, kind of feeding them some targets. Um, so he's the other one there. So it's certainly a rough day for the offense, health
right.
wise, not just performance, but health. The one thing, it sounds really bad, and it is bad. You know, Jefferson leaves the game. So the ball was not terribly accurate. It's too high. Go up like this, right over the middle. It's a very vulnerable position to be in. Jefferson, to his credit, makes the play, holds on to the ball, gets the first down, but takes the shot in the ribs. Again, like it's just it's a football play. It's a legal hit. Um, just unfortunate. Does go to the hospital. Seems to have mostly been a precautionary thing. And O'Connell was mostly encouraged. I think they just ruled out the really bad stuff. You know, whatever that means, from like a shot to kind of like your rib chest area. I'm assuming, you know, internally you get a lot of major organs in there. I'm not a doctor. Point being, they've ruled out the major stuff, and he was able to travel back with the team, right? So those are really, really positive signs. The On the other end, right, is that they actually have a short week this week because the game is on Saturday, right? So it's almost like a similar. Think of it almost like you're playing a Monday night game and you have to play on Sunday. It's kind of like a similar timeline, right? So is that one game going to make the difference for Justin Jefferson? I don't know. Frankly, again, I'm not a doctor, but O'Connell did mention, you know, he's again, it's a short week, right? And it's the same factor is going to be kind of behind Brian O'Neill, your starting right tackle, who's having a rough game, but is still a stud. Alexander Madison was probably having his best game of the year, or one of. Also, you know, short week, you know, and ankle injury there, right? Naylor, if he's in concussion protocol, and if he is diagnosed with concussion, probably no Naylor. And then in that case, I think they elevate N'Keal Harry, I think, who gives them some really good size along the outside, kind of a plus blocker. They do some neat stuff with Harry to kind of get to the edge with the running backs. So kind of look for that if Naylor's out, kind of gives them some extra muscle as a receiver. So I guess we'll just see. And then it's Ty Chandler and then Wongwu as your two backs. They got Dwayne McBride on the practice squad, but there was a CJ Ham sighting with that carry. That was excellent. everyone in Minnesota loves seeing CJ Ham pick up a carry and actually pick up like 7-8 yards. And Mullens actually gave him like a bit of a shout out in his post game presser. So there we go. I got my son gave me a sticker, little cactus sticker.
I
So
was wondering what that was.
there's a shout out there. And so anyhow, that's kind of where we're at with injuries. It doesn't sound like for any of these instances, short of maybe Naylor, it's hard to know how severe concussion is, and so we don't want to minimize that. But when it comes to Madison, O'Neill, Dalton Reisner, Jefferson, it doesn't seem like these are going to be season enders. These might be week 15 enders. This might mean no week 15 in Cincinnati, but we'll just kind of have to see how it goes. You think especially for Jefferson, just really tough, where he's coming off the 7-game absence. It's tough. And if for Mullens, like if you're Mullens, man, you want that dude. You want your dude there, right? Who can kind of give you that vertical element. And it just makes it easier for Addison, for Hawkins, for everyone else. It's that domino effect, right? Where he commands so much attention. So we'll just see. But again, last point on this, the Vikings do tend to be quite cautious when it comes to player health, which I think is actually quite wise, given where they're at in kind of their development as a franchise and where they're going, and where Jefferson's at, who's like 24 years old and the cornerstone of your team. Be smart with it. So if it's iffy, if it's 50-50, they usually tend to not play the player. Usually. So we'll see if anything changes. Now they're 7-6. They're in the playoff race. They control their own destiny. Cincinnati is legit going to be a tough game. Jake Browning's been playing pretty well for those guys. They've won a couple games now. Jake Browning, former Viking, came into the NFL with the Vikings. So we'll just see, I guess. We'll just see. But not season enders, it seems, for most of those guys who went out.
Yeah. No, I think there's probably not a whole lot else we can comment on the injuries at this point in terms of just like waiting to see what happens. But certainly if all of those guys are missing, that's a big loss.
Yeah, man. You had Blake Brandell, who's a tackle by trade, in at right guard, and then you had Brian O'Neill, your starting RT. He was out, and David Quisenberry was in for him. Coming into this game, Sam, Ingram and O'Neill played 100% of the snaps for the offense, and so you literally the same right side of your offensive line were just the exact same, right? And they were kind of theirs. So tough there. It was definitely a bit patchwork, but again, they hung in there. Like Max Crosby is legit, right? He's an excellent player. It wasn't pretty, but they wasn't pretty nothing.
Wasn't pretty, but they do continue, and we talked about this, like they more so this year than in past years have guys that continue to step up when there are injuries that happen, and that has been huge, and that has kept them afloat.
Man, 7-6.
Right. So let's look ahead, because again, you mentioned Cincinnati heading in, and the Vikings do again control their destiny moving forward. Still waiting on a Packers game tonight to figure out what that looks like. Exactly.
That's right.
But at this point, the Vikings do have a chance to actually now control their own destiny of even a division title. And we're getting ahead of ourselves there a little bit. But with 2 games against Detroit moving forward, and 2 games back right now, it's still there. Although maybe make the argument, how serious is the team that just won 3-0? But
that's exactly, and against the Raiders, so it's not like you're like going toe to toe with like the Eagles or if like the Niners or something.
So again, I feel like each week is just kind of like, we'll just see what happens. Any maybe final thoughts against Cincinnati? Again, you mentioned before looking at it, was like, well, you know what, no Joe Burrow, this team is definitely different. But they've had some good games, and yesterday put up a lot of points on the board. So
2 weeks in a row, Sam, I think they've done quite well.
So the Vikings, it is not going to be an easy game. Not that I was thinking that it necessarily was going to be.
I think so. You're right. They control their own destiny, and let's just say they win their next 4 games, they're NFC North champs. Amazing. right? Like, it's just everything that happens. So it is, again, football can be very empowering, right? And that is an empowering place to be. That if we just win our games, just, if we just win our games, get the division, we're going to host a playoff game. The Packers tonight, they got the Giants. So, really the Packers should win, but we'll just see. Funny things sometimes happen on in the primetime games, and you kind of just want, the Packers are coming off some major wins, and you kind of just wonder, is there going to be a letdown, or can they kind of keep this going? So we'll see. But regardless of what happens, the Vikings fully control the 6th seed in the NFC, right? If they just take care of business, they'll be the 6th seed, and if they get really hot, they're going to win the division, which will mean, because I mean um, with the Buccaneers and Saints division, the South, like they're not climbing out of the 4th spot. So if the Vikings actually do, they'll be the number 3 team in the NFC, which is like, damn, dude, like who could have seen that coming, right? So we'll just see. And the final thing I'll say, final thing, Sam, legit. Last year, there's all this talk about the Vikings and the point differential. So right now they're plus 24. The Lions, who lead the division, are only plus 26. I'm not trying to overstate things or say I think the Lions are definitely like a clear step better than the Vikings, especially once you factor in health of key players. But I don't necessarily look at the Lions as like dominant world beaters in the same way that I look at the 49ers, right? So let's just see how things go.
Yeah. Again, we'll get too ahead of ourselves, but it'll be fascinating to see. And I will make this comment again. You maybe can jump up from that 60 to the 3 seed of getting the division champ.
You could,
but who do you think you're going to play? Well,
there you go. Yeah,
it's about home field.
I was going to say it's playing at the bank, right?
Yeah,
that's what it's about rather than Ford Field. Yeah,
that's still almost a certainty that you're playing Detroit in that game,
which would be the 3rd time in like a 4-week stretch. So there'll be some chippiness, some bad blood. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, good. Well, they got to get themselves there, and that. But
yeah, that's right.
Another win doesn't matter how it happens. They've done it. So we'll wrap up there. Again, thanks for people for listening. Check out Vikings coverage, purpleptsd.com, vikingsterritory.com. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week. Bye.